The VIP hospital room reeked of harsh antiseptics while my slow heartbeat echoed through the monitoring machine. My name is Leona, a completely independent business owner who received a devastating death sentence when the attending physician announced I only had a few days left to live due to rapid multiple organ failure. My parents immediately rushed to my bedside to grab my cold hands with loud theatrical sobs, while pretending to be entirely heartbroken over my tragic diagnosis. However, through my partially closed eyelids, I accidentally caught the gleaming look of absolute satisfaction passing between their eyes. The heavy wooden door had barely clicked shut when their fake tears vanished completely to be replaced by a highly sinister conversation. I clearly heard my parents smiling brightly as they whispered with excitement that all the fortune would finally be theirs. My sister did not even bother hiding her immense greed as she rudely interrupted their celebration to loudly declare that she wanted the luxury house in Miami along with the massive retail chains in Las Vegas. She explicitly warned our parents not to fight her for those specific properties, while mentally calculating the massive profits they could make from selling my businesses. As soon as those three heartless relatives used the excuse of finding a good restaurant to secretly celebrate their upcoming freedom, my eyes snapped open with sharp clarity. I used every last ounce of my fading strength to grab my phone to dial my private secretary to officially activate a ruthless secret plan. If you want to see exactly how a betrayed daughter turned her final days into the ultimate financial nightmare for her greedy family, please subscribe to the channel right now to follow my journey of revenge to the very end. 2 months ago, right after my complex tumor surgery, my parents and my sister Miranda used the convenient excuse of facilitating my recovery to move permanently into my Boston mansion. Lying completely still with my eyes closed on the sterile hospital bed, I began meticulously piecing together the exact timeline of my disastrous health decline that had baffled all my doctors. It became agonizingly clear that my sudden physical deterioration perfectly coincided with the exact moment my family established their dominant presence inside my personal sanctuary. I had initially welcomed their sudden display of familial affection because I genuinely believed they wanted to help me navigate the difficult post-operative healing process. However, I soon realized that my physical strength was mysteriously draining away day by day despite the surgeon assuring me that the medical procedure had been an absolute success. My exhausted mind vividly replayed the highly unusual daily routine where my mother constantly insisted on bringing every single customized meal directly to my private quarters while forbidding the household staff from interfering. I clearly remembered catching a fleeting glimpse through the crack of the door of her secretly adding several drops of a mysterious blue liquid into my daily beverages. Whenever I questioned the strange metallic taste lingering on my tongue, she would simply offer a deceptively comforting explanation to ease my immediate concerns. You need to drink every last drop of this special herbal supplement so your delicate body can regain its strength much faster, my mother would say, with a chillingly warm smile while handing me the tainted cup. Miranda would often stand right behind her, impatiently watching me swallow the bitter liquid while muttering about how much of a burden my illness had become. My growing internal suspicions eventually reached a terrifying peak. One quiet evening when I decided to completely trust my instincts and properly test the questionable concoction she had prepared for my dinner. I waited until the entire house was silent before I secretly poured the entire bowl of that suspiciously tinted soup directly into the soil of an expensive potted plant resting in the corner of my spacious bedroom. Waking up the very next morning to witness that previously vibrant botanical specimen completely withered with decaying yellow leaves confirmed the absolute horrific reality of my grim situation. That undeniable visual evidence proved beyond any reasonable doubt that the people sharing my bloodline were intentionally introducing toxic substances into my system to secure an early inheritance. The profound psychological betrayal cut far deeper than the excruciating physical pain ravaging my internal organs. Returning my sharp focus to the freezing environment of the hospital room, I absolutely refused to let despair consume my spirit or quietly wait for an inevitable demise at their treacherous hands. Instead of breaking down in useless tears, I began silently formulating a comprehensive retaliatory strategy to completely turn the tables on my ruthless relatives before they could finalize their plans. I needed to rigorously protect the massive retail business empire I had painstakingly built from scratch from falling into the greedy palms of those cold-blooded individuals. Every calculated thought passing through my newly awakened mind was entirely dedicated to securing undeniable evidence of their crimes while ensuring they remained completely oblivious to the fact that I knew their secret. I meticulously reviewed all my massive financial assets and complex legal contracts in my head to quickly identify the exact vulnerabilities I could easily exploit. In order to execute this dangerous survival plan, I made the absolute decision to completely fast from any outside food or beverages brought into the hospital room by my smiling family members. I would rely entirely on the sterile intravenous nutrition provided directly by the professional medical staff to preserve my failing life during this highly critical recovery period. I will not consume a single drop of anything unless it comes directly from the sealed pharmacy. I firmly whispered to myself while watching the transparent liquid dripping life back into my damaged veins. This strict fasting protocol was absolutely necessary to systematically flush the remaining chemical toxins from my poisoned system and maintain the intense mental clarity required for the psychological battle ahead. I knew that demonstrating fake physical weakness to deceive my enemies while secretly gathering my internal strength would be the ultimate psychological weapon to completely destroy their premature celebration. That evening, right after receiving the devastating news from the doctor regarding my rapidly deteriorating health, all three of them headed straight to the most luxurious steakhouse located in the heart of the city. I would later discover that my treacherous family callously raised expensive wine glasses to joyfully celebrate my predicted death, without displaying a single ounce of genuine sorrow for their dying relative. Intoxicated by the premium alcohol mixed with their overwhelming greed, my father proudly declared his ruthless intentions to the rest of the table with absolute confidence. As soon as we finally obtain that official death certificate, we will liquidate the entire retail chain to completely wipe out my massive gambling debts, he announced with a sickeningly triumphant smirk. Miranda immediately responded to his statement by tossing her hair with immense arrogance, while aggressively spitting out her own malicious venom regarding my imminent passing. Finally, I will never have to look at the face of that constantly arrogant sister ever again, because the Boston mansion will become my own private stage, she sneered with pure malice. While my blood relatives were busy indulging in premium steaks bought with my hard-earned money, I was actively executing the most crucial phase of my secret defensive strategy from my hospital bed. I carefully retrieved the encrypted digital tablet hidden beneath my sterile mattress to discreetly access the comprehensive security system I had previously installed throughout my entire Boston residence. Knowing exactly how treacherous my parents could be regarding financial matters, I had placed microscopic cameras equipped with highly sensitive audio recorders in every single room of that massive estate long before my surgery. Navigating through the complex interface with trembling fingers, I systematically isolated the specific dates matching the exact moments my physical condition began plummeting during my post-operative recovery. The high-definition screen illuminated the dark hospital room as I meticulously extracted multiple video files, clearly capturing their heartless conversations, discussing the most efficient ways to silently eliminate me. More importantly, I successfully located the undeniable visual evidence showing my mother repeatedly pouring that mysterious blue liquid into my daily soup, while my father stood guard by the bedroom door. Staring at the glaring proof of their unforgivable betrayal, my heart turned completely cold towards the people who were supposed to protect me unconditionally. I realized that possessing these digital files was only the very first step toward ensuring they would face the absolute maximum legal consequences for their monstrous actions against my life. Gathering my remaining mental focus, I quickly composed a detailed text message to my private secretary, Nina, instructing her to immediately synchronize all the extracted surveillance footage to an offshore, encrypted cloud server. You must secure these specific video files using the highest level of military encryption because they represent the definitive proof of my attempted murder. I typed with absolute determination. Furthermore, I strictly ordered Nina to rigorously review every single legal clause embedded within my corporate structures, along with my personal asset management contracts. We needed to discover the most punishing financial loopholes available to permanently freeze their access to my wealth the second they attempted to execute their hostile takeover. Nina responded almost instantly, confirming that she was already mobilizing my elite corporate legal team to prepare the necessary documentation for a devastating counterblow against my unsuspecting family members. Knowing that my loyal associate was actively locking down my entire business empire provided me with an immense sense of psychological relief during that incredibly tense night. I spent the remaining hours of darkness finalizing the meticulous script for the upcoming confrontation, while mentally preparing myself to face their ultimate treachery without shedding a single tear. The sheer adrenaline coursing through my damaged veins temporarily masked my physical agony as I transformed my hospital bed into a strategic command center focused entirely on survival. Every time the vital monitor beeped rhythmically beside me, it served as a stark reminder that my biological clock was supposedly ticking down toward a premature demise. However, those three greedy individuals celebrating at the steakhouse remained completely unaware that my impending death was nothing more than an elaborate illusion designed to orchestrate their ultimate downfall. I silently vowed to strip away every single luxurious privilege they had shamelessly exploited, so they could truly understand the terrifying reality of losing everything overnight. By the time the morning sun began piercing through the thin hospital blinds, my impenetrable financial fortress was fully operational while waiting to trap them in their own deceitful web. The following morning, the atmosphere inside my hospital room became incredibly suffocating as the heavy sound of rapid footsteps echoed loudly down the corridor. Before I could even adjust my posture, my parents suddenly burst through the wooden door, accompanied by a completely unfamiliar man clutching a thick leather briefcase. I immediately recognized the predatory glint in the stranger's eyes, realizing they had actually brought a highly corrupt notary directly into my medical sanctuary to execute their ultimate theft. My mother aggressively pushed a dense stack of heavily worded legal documents onto my lap, while forcing an expensive gold pen right between my trembling fingers. The bold heading clearly stated it was a comprehensive power of attorney designed to grant them absolute control over my entire corporate empire, along with my personal bank accounts. Stepping closer to the bed rail, my father instantly equipped his perfectly rehearsed mask of profound parental agony while reaching out to gently stroke my hair with feigned affection. He leaned down to whisper his deeply manipulative psychological poison directly into my ear, hoping to exploit my supposedly vulnerable state for his own financial gain. My beloved daughter, please sign this document so your parents have the absolute legal right to manage the business for you while you are this weak, because everything will be fine, he softly pleaded. Despite his supposedly heartbreaking performance, I simply stared blankly at the overwhelming paperwork while deliberately allowing my hands to shake violently to simulate extreme exhaustion, delaying the process. Witnessing my intentional hesitation caused Miranda to completely lose whatever tiny shred of patience she possessed as she stepped forward to reveal her true monstrous nature without hesitation. She glared down at my pale face with pure hatred before hissing her incredibly cruel words through tightly clenched teeth, loud enough for everyone to clearly hear. Stop being so stubborn because you cannot take that massive pile of money to the grave with you anyway, so just sign it quickly and get it over with," she demanded with absolute malice. Hearing those utterly heartless words from my own sister provided me with the exact theatrical cue I needed to execute the most critical phase of my defensive performance. I slowly lowered the heavy gold pen toward the signature line, allowing the shiny metal tip to barely graze the crisp white paper for a split second. The very moment the dark blue ink made contact with the document, I deliberately relaxed every single muscle in my body simultaneously while letting my head fall limply against the pillows. The expensive pen immediately slipped from my suddenly lifeless grip to roll harmlessly onto the cold floor as I tightly closed my eyes to convincingly fake a deep, irreversible coma. An explosion of absolute frantic chaos instantly erupted throughout the confined space the very second my physical form went completely limp against the adjustable medical mattress. However, the deafening screams echoing around my bed were not born from genuine, terrifying grief over losing a family member, but rather from pure, blinding rage. My mother began violently shaking my fragile shoulders, while my father yelled terrible obscenities, because they were entirely infuriated over failing to secure that one single signature required to legally steal my wealth. They completely ignored the erratic warning sounds of the heart monitor, choosing instead to desperately pry my rigid fingers open to force the pen back into my hand, while I remained entirely motionless. Fortunately, my loyal medical team had been secretly briefed about the volatile situation beforehand, causing them to immediately swarm into the room following my prearranged signal to initiate fake emergency procedures. Several stern nurses forcefully shoved my screaming parents away from the bed while loudly declaring a critical medical code to justify physically removing all unauthorized personnel from the immediate vicinity. My father continuously shouted desperate legal threats, while Miranda threw a massive childish tantrum as the hospital security guards firmly dragged the entirely frustrated profiteers out into the isolated hallway. Listening to the heavy door finally slam shut against their furious protests, I allowed a small, victorious smile to secretly form, knowing they had completely lost their only chance to legally rob me. That weekend inside my massive Boston mansion, all the hypocritical dark ribbons of fake mourning were completely torn down to be replaced by brilliantly dazzling crystal chandeliers illuminating the festive atmosphere. Firmly believing that I would definitely not survive the night after spending several consecutive days trapped in my medically induced coma, my treacherous family decisively discarded their fabricated masks of profound grief. They finally decided to expose their genuine greedy nature to the entire world without showing a single trace of hesitation or guilt regarding my supposedly impending demise. My parents shamelessly utilized my personal credit lines to aggressively fund an incredibly extravagant networking party overflowing with premium champagne and expensive caviar designed specifically to attract notorious corporate liquidators to our private estate. Their ultimate financial objective involved illegally securing massive cash deposits from those ruthless investors by prematurely offering my highly lucrative Providence retail locations at significantly discounted prices before my heart officially stopped beating. Wandering through the lavishly decorated grand hall adorned with imported flowers, Miranda dressed herself in my most expensive designer couture, while obnoxiously parading around as if she had already inherited every single penny of my massive wealth. She aggressively pointed her manicured finger at my terrified household staff before loudly barking her tyrannical orders across the crowded room for everyone to clearly hear her newly assumed authority. From now on, I am the sole mistress of this spectacular house, so anyone who disobeys my direct commands will be fired immediately without any severance pay. Miranda arrogantly shrieked with pure entitlement. My mother also failed miserably at concealing her overwhelming euphoric excitement as she confidently clinked her crystal champagne flute with several wealthy guests, mingling near the luxurious indoor fountain. She completely ignored the basic social decencies of a supposedly grieving parent while excitedly delivering her sickeningly triumphant speech to the gathered crowd of highly opportunistic businessmen looking for a quick profit. Finally, our family has permanently escaped the oppressive shadow of that overly controlling daughter, so we can truly enjoy a genuinely glorious life filled with endless luxury. My mother boasted with a delightfully wicked smile, while those shameless traitors blindly celebrated their premature victory inside my violated home. My mind was sharper than ever before, because my physical strength had actually recovered significantly within the quiet confines of the intensive care unit. Completely starving my own body of any contaminated food, while exclusively relying on safe medical hydration, had successfully flushed the remaining traces of that toxic blue liquid from my recovering internal organs. The exhausting days spent pretending to be a lifeless vegetable had provided my resilient immune system the exact uninterrupted rest required to aggressively rebuild my shattered stamina to its former glorious peak. Knowing that the perfect moment for absolute retribution had finally arrived, I carefully monitored the hospital corridor through the small glass window, waiting patiently for the scheduled evening shift change. Nina had flawlessly secured the perimeter outside my room by creating a brilliant administrative distraction that temporarily pulled the monitoring nursing staff entirely away from their designated medical stations. Without a single moment of hesitation, I decisively ripped the sharp intravenous needle out of my bruised arm, while firmly ignoring the sudden sting of pain radiating intensely through my fragile, pale skin. I deliberately shed the pathetic hospital gown to quickly dress myself in a sharply tailored black power suit that perfectly projected the intimidating corporate authority I had meticulously cultivated over the past successful years. Moving with absolute silent precision, I slipped out of the sterile medical facility through a highly restricted internal staff exit, where a heavily tinted black vehicle was already waiting quietly to transport me toward my ultimate vengeance against the very people who tried to bury me alive. Exactly at 8 o'clock in the evening, the continuous clinking of expensive crystal glasses echoed loudly throughout the incredibly luxurious living room, forcefully interrupting my father's empty investment promises. The extravagant gathering had reached its peak with numerous influential tycoons eagerly waiting to hear the detailed financial projections regarding my highly successful business empire. He stood confidently behind the ornate wooden podium, adjusting his designer suit tie to boldly address the dozens of wealthy guests gathered around the indoor fountain. My father raised his hands, demanding absolute attention, before projecting his deceitful voice across the lavish space to officially initiate his fraudulent corporate takeover. Welcome to the spectacular new era of the Providence retail chain, where your massive profits will multiply exponentially under my expert executive management, my father proudly declared to the greedy crowd. He enthusiastically gestured toward the massive projector screen slowly descending from the high ceiling, fully expecting to display beautifully manipulated business metrics designed to steal their corporate capital. However, the very moment the expensive audiovisual equipment powered up a highly confidential high-definition security video was unexpectedly broadcast directly onto the entire living room wall instead of his fabricated financial charts. The shocking hidden camera footage clearly exposed my mother standing inside my private kitchen alongside Miranda as they both heartlessly conspired against my fading life. Everyone watched in absolute horror as my mother viciously mixed that highly toxic blue liquid into my daily soup while flashing a sickeningly triumphant smile directly at the lens. The crisp surround sound system captured Miranda's chillingly sharp voice, echoing terribly across the silent room for every single corporate investor to witness her undeniable malice. Add a few more drops, Mom, because she has been clinging to life for way too long already, Miranda complained bitterly in the incredibly clear surveillance recording. A suffocating dead silence instantly blanketed the entire extravagant space, causing the completely shocked corporate executives to freeze in absolute horror upon witnessing an active assassination plot. The sheer brutality of their casual conversation completely destroyed the festive atmosphere, leaving the gathered businessmen staring at my exposed family members with profound disgust marking their pale faces. Several wealthy guests were so profoundly disturbed by the undeniable visual proof of premeditated attempted murder that they involuntarily dropped their premium wine glasses from their trembling fingers. The fragile crystal plummeted straight onto the hard marble floor, creating a piercing, shattering sound that violently broke the sickening tension dominating the massive estate. Terrified of being legally implicated in a highly serious criminal conspiracy, those previously eager businessmen immediately canceled every single pending financial agreement without a single second of hesitation. The panicked crowd scrambled frantically to gather their expensive coats, while violently shoving past each other in a desperate stampede to quickly escape through the grand front doors. My parents frantically attempted to block the main exit to offer some ridiculous explanation, but the furious investors aggressively pushed them aside to flee the contaminated crime scene. They desperately shouted empty reassurances into the chaotic void, trying to salvage their ruined networking event, but nobody wanted anything to do with a family of brazen murderers. Miranda burst into hysterical tears, realizing her precious high society reputation was permanently destroyed in a matter of seconds, while my mother collapsed onto the floor in utter shock. Just as the final horrified guest completely vacated the chaotic mansion, leaving my treacherous blood relatives stranded in utter disbelief, the massive electrical system was abruptly cut off entirely. The brilliant crystal chandeliers instantly died out, plunging the three ruthless villains into a dead, silent darkness, perfectly matching the blackness of their own greedy souls. For 15 suffocating minutes trapped inside that completely pitch-black environment, the three desperate villains shrieked in absolute panic while frantically pulling out their glowing smartphones to illuminate the chaotic ruins of their ruined celebration. They stumbled blindly over broken crystal glasses, whining about the disastrous collapse of their lucrative networking event, while remaining entirely oblivious to my silent arrival. The extravagant crystal chandeliers suddenly flared back to life with blinding brilliance, precisely illuminating my highly authoritative entrance into the destroyed living room alongside my personal lawyer, Blake. My treacherous parents physically recoiled in absolute disbelief, while Miranda gasped loudly upon witnessing my completely healthy physical state standing confidently before them instead of rotting away in a hospital bed. They had genuinely believed my fading body was taking its final breaths. Yet here I stood radiating absolute power while completely dominating the massive space. Wasting absolutely no time tolerating their shocked silence, Lawyer Blake immediately slammed a highly official emergency eviction notice forcefully onto the ruined marble table. He subsequently presented a massive stack of certified banking documents, proving that every single premium credit card they had been leeching off my personal name was now permanently frozen. The severe legal expert explicitly clarified that they no longer possessed any legal authorization to reside within my property or utilize a single penny of my corporate wealth. Lawyer Blake further presented a comprehensive dossier containing all their hidden gambling debts, validating my complete refusal to ever finance their lavish lifestyles again. I stared directly into the terrified eyes of the exact people sharing my biological bloodline before delivering my ultimate financial judgment with a voice completely devoid of any human warmth. Holding their terrified gaze, I enunciated every single freezing syllable so they could fully comprehend the massive magnitude of their irreversible financial destruction. I completely stopped paying those massive debts on your behalf, so all your bad debt notices alongside your vehicle repossession orders are officially due immediately. Therefore, congratulations on your official bankruptcy. I stated with absolute coldness. Their pathetic delusions of unearned billionaire status violently shattered against the terrifying reality of an inescapable financial abyss, leaving them entirely cornered without a single escape route. My mother immediately collapsed onto her trembling knees, weeping hysterically, while my father heavily dropped to the floor beside her, begging for unearned mercy. Miranda completely lost her arrogant posture, choosing instead to grovel pathetically at my expensive shoes while sobbing uncontrollably in a desperate attempt to manipulate my non-existent sympathies. Leona, please forgive us for this terrible foolishness because despite everything we are still your own flesh-blood family. My mother pleaded through her dramatic crocodile tears. I stared down at their pathetic theatrical performance, feeling absolutely nothing except profound disgust toward the very individuals who had systematically poisoned my daily meals. Firmly stepping back to avoid their grasping hands, I coldly rejected their cheap emotional manipulation with a final devastating declaration, establishing my permanent boundaries. Family is definitely not a convenient label, giving you the inherent right to casually strip away my life, so from this exact moment forward, we possess absolutely zero connection, I declared with unyielding steel. Every single shred of their delusional hope for a miraculous reconciliation was instantly extinguished by the sheer undeniable finality carrying through my sharp words. The crushing weight of their immediate poverty finally broke their arrogant spirits, forcing them to realize their malicious plot had completely backfired. The three exposed criminals could only collapse further onto the cold marble floor, wailing loudly in complete helplessness while facing the terrifyingly dark reality of their impending criminal prosecution. Their luxurious paradise had officially transformed into an inescapable nightmare, entirely orchestrated by their own bottomless greed, leaving them absolutely destitute. Only a few minutes following my absolute final declaration, piercing police sirens violently shattered the quiet suburban neighborhood, while numerous patrol cars completely surrounded my massive Boston mansion. Heavily armed law enforcement officers immediately stormed into my ruined living room without hesitation to forcefully handcuff my three treacherous relatives right before my watchful eyes. The commanding officer loudly read them their constitutional rights while brutally dragging them toward the waiting tactical vehicles to face severe justice for their unforgivable actions against me. They were officially arrested, facing multiple severe felony charges encompassing massive financial fraud, alongside the premeditated attempted murder concerning my rapidly declining physical health over those agonizing weeks. Witnessing those greedy individuals being aggressively shoved into the back of those flashing police cruisers finally lifted the suffocating psychological weight that had crushed my chest for several terrifying months. Several months following that incredibly chaotic night, the highly publicized criminal trial officially concluded with the strict judge delivering extremely severe prison sentences to my entire biological family. They were permanently locked away behind cold iron bars, forcing them to pay the absolute ultimate price for allowing their bottomless greed to completely destroy their human morality. My physical health eventually achieved a miraculous full recovery once my resilient immune system completely purged those lingering toxic chemicals under the careful supervision of my trusted doctors. I spent several therapeutic weeks completely remodeling the entire estate to permanently eradicate their foul memory from my sanctuary, while choosing instead to relentlessly expand my successful retail empire alongside Nina. Building a magnificent future completely free from their toxic manipulation became my ultimate victory over the terrifying darkness they intentionally brought into my previously peaceful existence. Before we officially conclude today's incredibly intense story, please do not quickly skip past this final segment because we truly need to discuss some crucial life lessons together. Speaking entirely from my personal perspective as the creator of this channel, I firmly believe this chilling narrative perfectly highlights the terrifying reality regarding unchecked human greed within our modern society. We often blindly assume that sharing biological blood automatically guarantees unconditional love, but this dramatic saga proves that the absolute most dangerous predators can easily hide behind the sacred label of family. The horrific actions demonstrated by those heartless individuals represent a profoundly disgusting betrayal that destroys the fundamental core of basic human decency merely for the sake of temporary material wealth. The absolute most valuable educational takeaway we must extract from Leona's terrifying ordeal revolves around the massive importance of maintaining strict financial independence to fiercely protect your own life. Her unwavering ability to securely control her own corporate wealth ultimately became the exact impenetrable shield that successfully saved her life from those ruthless relatives plotting her premature demise. Financial independence grants you the incredible power to firmly walk away from highly toxic environments without ever depending on the exact abusers who actively wish to cause you permanent physical harm. If you ever found yourself trapped in a similarly dangerous situation involving your own parents, would you possess the immense psychological strength required to permanently cut them off like our protagonist did? Perhaps you might have chosen a completely different strategic method to expose their dark crimes, so please share your unique thoughts in the comments section below so we can actively discuss it. Thank you so much for patiently listening to this thrilling journey until the very end, because your continuous support truly motivates this channel to produce significantly better content every single day. Please remember to hit that subscribe button right now to guarantee you never miss our next captivating drama filled with explosive twists.